Oh my gosh, guys. I don't know if y'all noticed already, but the new Sims 4 pack does feature characters from the Urbz in it, and somehow they even included my favorite, Crispin Black, which any subscribers have probably seen me talk about it a few times in the community posts, but not only did they include him, but they also gave him more lore. Crispin is now older and a dad. He has an adopted kiddo, which is so cute that I could squeal. Which, by the way, at the time of writing the script, I did not know the kid's last name. The kid's last name is Mark, which is very interesting because that is Skid's last name, not Crispin's. The kid's name is also Ollie, which is a reference to a skateboarding trick. That is very interesting. It almost makes me wonder, is this supposed to be Skid's kid and not Crispin? And did something happen to Skid that caused Crispin to have to raise the kid? That's kind of sad to think about. But anyways, I've been freaking out about this across my social medias because y'all gotta understand, Urbz had been my favorite spin-off series. It's a game I've played before I even played the PC ones, and Crispin in particular has been my favorite character from it for years. That's why I chose him to kind of represent this channel. So to see that Sims 4 decided to put him in everyone's game is pretty cool, not gonna lie. This decision comes off as a very pleasant surprise because for the longest time, I really thought EA had forgotten about the Urbz, that the Urbz franchise was doomed for nothing new other than the slight reference to it in an object or job descriptions. To see them included as actual pre-mades in the new pack is pleasantly surprising, but definitely welcome. I hope in future packs, they give us more old Sims, like Sims from Bustin' Out or the Sims 2 console, but their choices for Sims to use has me very curious. Since they only used Sims from the Urbz, this feels intentional, which makes me wonder if they had something planned in the future for this franchise. So, if they are, this is what I'd want in a new Urbz game, which are two possibilities. I'll talk about the first one. And no, I don't want a remake because I'm one of those gamers who can't play old games because ew, old graphics are totally yucky. They must be 60 frames per second in 4K ultra realistic graphics. No, I'd actually want a remake because I think a remake can improve a lot of the problems Urbz had, or a lot of the things it didn't have. As much as I love the Urbz, it's my favorite Sims spin-off, as I've said, but just because it's my favorite, I'm not gonna pretend it doesn't have issues. Sorry, I'm not a toxic Sims 4 player that's gonna pretend my game is perfect. The Urbz did have some issues indeed, namely poorly executed concepts or lack of features due to technical limitations at the time. With a remake, we can fix these problems and make the Urbz into an even better game. Let's start off with the social feature. Many players and critics complain that the game is too repetitive and that the social feature makes it too easy, and I agree with the part about the social feature making it too easy. You see, the Urbz has colored social options. This shows you what interactions will most likely go well with an herb and what will not. While it's true that green won't always work and red won't always fail, but green is usually the safest option, and that you can just use it and it will rarely fail. I think it'd be better if the Urbz was like the rest of the Sims games, and there were no indicators as to what an herb likes. If you want to know what an herb likes, you have to learn it by trying out the socials and seeing for yourself. This would make the game more challenging. The Urbz was supposed to have marriage in it, but the feature was scrapped. This was likely due to marriage interfering with NPC/pre-made's unique behaviors. I feel today they could probably solve that issue, so a remake should definitely add marriage. On top of marriage, the game allegedly had scrapped woohoo functions. According to this old mod, The Sims Dread from 2013, I tried searching for evidence but couldn't find anything related to woohoo, or playing as it was originally referred to. No, none of it was in the animation files. If woohoo did exist, I imagine it must be broken due to the missing animations. But regardless if the Urbz was supposed to have it or not, I still think they should add it to the remake. Woohoo feels like an essential and iconic part of the Sims series. Besides, aren't there some Urbz you'd have loved to get freaky with? Well, when I say I want a better story, it's not that the Urbz story was bad, it was just poorly explained. There's evidence that the story would have started out with Darius explaining his dilemma and why he needs your Urbz help. He explains a bad bunch had moved into town and is messing around with his turf. Darius takes this personally, and so does his other famous friends. His pals pay Darius to take care of the problem, and Rich, Darius sees you as the key to the solution. As you're nobody, therefore the bad guys won't be suspicious of you, making it easier to take them out. In return, Darius and his pals teach you how to make it big in the city and become famous like them, maybe even earning a penthouse. See, in the final game, for some reason this introduction was cut and simplified. The story instead just starts with Will introducing you to Darius and Darius just agreeing to help you earn rep. It comes off as strange, it makes the plot more unclear, it seems a bit random. If a remake happens, I'd like for them to keep the intended introduction intact. It'd make for a better direction of the story and have players be more invested. Speaking of Darius, another cut feature is that Darius was intended to be your Urbz mentor, which yes, he kind of is in the game anyway, but he was supposed to have a bigger involvement. He would have followed your Urbz around and you could actually interact with him. This is proven with unused dialogue boxes that indicates he's talking about the district you're visiting, and if you look at older trailers, you'll notice that Darius is with the player's Urbz during the daytime. I'm unsure why this part was cut from the game, maybe Darius didn't behave as intended, but it's clearly something they wanted, as Urbz 2 also planned to have Jade play a similar role. So if we get that remake, I'd like for them to implement the idea that Darius is often with your Urbz, rather than him only appearing during the midnight parties. The Sims 2 console is iconic for its layering style and Create-A-Sim. You can pick any shirt you want, then throw on any jacket. It's really fun and a feature we can only see in the console games, but this wasn't an idea that came from the Sims 2 console. This was actually an idea that they had since the Urbz. You can see the demonstration in this very early trailer, where the concept for Create an Urbz had what appears to be the same layer features: undershirt, overshirt, and jacket. Again, this was likely cut because it's apparent that the Urbz development team struggled with many of the concepts they had in mind. Some stuff they weren't able to pull off until the Sims 2 console. So again, this is a feature I'd love to see implemented in an Urbz remake. Another thing that the Urbz team was sadly held back by technical difficulties was the abilities to take pets anywhere. Pets were originally not supposed to be tied to your apartments. This is evident by, yep, more unused dialogue boxes. One shows a scenario where your pet would have ran away from you, and you'd check your apartment to see if they returned there. Obviously, this can't happen in the game because they're always at the apartment. There are also early screenshots that show your pets with your Urbz outside of the apartment, so I'd like the ability to take my pet anywhere. I also wouldn't mind if they gave us more pets. I adore the pets in the Urbz. They're so mangy and funny looking, so it'd be cool to see more animals in this style. Maybe when you unlock an apartment, you can choose what specific animal you want for it. Like when you unlock the first pet, you have a bunch of different cats you can choose from, you know? Okay, I get it. The Black Eyed Peas might be considered has-beens, and they helped make the Urbz a product of its time, but y'all gotta hear me out. I love the Black Eyed Peas. I've loved them ever since I was a child. In fact, that was one of the things I found so cool about the Urbz. They had the Black Eyed Peas in it. And they contributed a lot of their music to the Urbz, and you gotta admit, they're bangers. I know there's a big chance EA doesn't want to pay the Black Eyed Peas to use them, but maybe they can just pay them enough to at least use the old music. I love these tracks so much. Really, a lot of the Urbz concepts might be considered outdated. I mean, skaters aren't really as popular as they once were. We kinda still have goths, or punks, but most modern goths don't really put much effort into it anymore. It's usually just e-girls and e-boys that wear black and maybe a little bit of makeup. Hipsters aren't really a thing either. The last time we saw them, they looked more like lumberjacks instead of beatniks. Even ravers are questionable, especially the ones in the Urbz. They definitely scream Y2K craze. I think it'd work a lot better if they advertise their remake as a Y2K style game, especially since the Y2K aesthetics seem to be getting more popular now, like how the 80s aesthetics were really popular during the mid to the late 2010s. I think they could really use that as a selling point. It feels like local multiplayer is becoming more and more scarce in video games. The Urbz had a local 2-player mode, and I'd honestly like that feature to stay. It was really fun to have this option to play Sims games with other people, something you don't really get in the PC games. In fact, I don't even know why this option was removed in Sims 2 Pets and Sims 2 Castaway, so yeah, I definitely want them to keep this function. If not a remake, then I think we should get the sequel we were supposed to. What Sims 2 was originally gonna be. If you didn't know, Urbz planned to have a sequel. What was it gonna be about? It was essentially the handheld's plot. Your Urbz would have moved to Sim City, and the Daddy Big Bucks was trying to buy out the city, and your Urbz has to stop him. The game would have even featured characters from the handheld version, as well as returning characters from the console version, and new characters. The sequel was intended to have multi-story buildings, children, and online play, all of which were scrapped after the game turned into The Sims 2, mostly due to technical limitations again, but of course now, those won't be an issue to implement at all. Children would be so cool to have, and I'd like to see more characters of various ages in the game. They don't need to age like they do in the PC version though, just because this is a more story-based game, so I don't see the point in having the characters age. That just feels like it'd get in the way of things, but it'd still be nice to just have the option to have playable kids, and you know, maybe do it like Bustin' Out did, be able to have babies with other Urbz, and those babies eventually grow into kids, and that's it. Multi-story buildings would also be fun, and honestly, in this day and age, I feel like they'd be a must. Since with today's technology, it'd be kind of awkward to play a Sims game without multi-story lots. I mean, you ever gone to a city and they were all just one-story buildings? As for online play, the idea sounds fun, but I wouldn't really want it implemented. If this was still 2005, sure, but with today's aggressive microtransactions, I just know the Urbz online mode would be plagued with microtransactions, and I wouldn't care for that. I would just like to have an online play just to hang out with fellow players sometimes, that's all. I actually really love the mini-games in the Urbz. If I can be honest, it's safe to be honest, right? But I've never really cared for rabbit hole jobs. Like, I don't hate them, of course, they've always been a core part of the Sims series, but whenever I'm offered with a live job, I almost always choose that over a rabbit hole job. That's why I love Sims Dream Ambition so much, and why I even enjoy Sims 4 Get to Work a lot, even though many people don't seem to like that one. Just because I love being able to play jobs. Jobs are such an essential part in life, so it's kind of weird that modern Sims games still don't really implement actually working into the game. But what I'm saying is that being able to work jobs in the Urbz was also something I was drawn to, especially in the other Sims console games, there weren't really any live jobs, so being able to go to work, make money, and keep playing instead of waiting for my Urbz to come back home was a lot of fun. I think for a sequel, or even a remake, they could implement more mini-games, jobs or other type of mini-games, like maybe make racing into an actual playable mini-game. After all, since the sequel was gonna take from the handheld story, they could also just take from the handheld to having many minigames. I think they could change up the minigames too, make them more than just tapping buttons / Simon Says-esque games. Since Dusty Hog was gonna be in a sequel, imagine if you actually had to race him on a bike. Or what if Mazuiko's restaurant makes a return and they can give you a Diner Dash-like game to do? Villains were fun. I think they could add new villains, as well as the returning jury from the first Urbz. This time around, they could be working for Daddy Big Bucks, and they're trying to intimidate your Urb and your pals to back off and leave town. With this, I'd like to see even more power socials as well. As I've mentioned, Urbz 2 was supposed to have Jade follow your Urb around, much like how Urbz intended for Darius to act, so yes, I'd love to see Jade as an actual character and play this role as well. I'd love to see many characters from both the Urbz console and handheld to return. The point of the Urbz wasn't just, oh, it's just a Sims but you can play it on consoles. No, it was intended to be this whole big spin-off series that would have spawned merchandise and multiple games. Heck, the game itself was intended to have a PC port. Sadly, all of this was cancelled when the game didn't meet sales expectations. But what I'm trying to say is that these are supposed to be actual characters we can learn about and love. Therefore, instead of like many Sims games that have new characters each game, with only the most iconic ones returning, I think the Urbz game should stick to many of the characters that were already established, only introducing a few new ones at a time with each entry. That being said, I don't know how they'd implement it. It'd be nice to be able to talk to the characters and learn more about them personally. Maybe they could have a chat function that's like a hybrid between Urbz console and Urbz handheld. Maybe something like The Sims 2 PSP had? I don't know. The humor. Oh my gosh, yes. One of the things I loved about the Urbz is that it's absolutely chaotic, mean-spirited, and vulgar. It's no secret that Sims currently holds this cozy and wholesome and family-friendly image. That's one reason why they keep referencing and doing stuff with My Sims, because My Sims with their cute, chibi appearances and Animal Crossing-like gameplay, it fits their current image quite well. Urbz doesn't really fit this image at all. Urbz was nasty, and I loved her for it. If they make a new Urbz, I really don't want them to water down these themes. Sims has the potential to be a large franchise, and think about it, there are quite a few large franchises that try to cater to all age groups. Think about DC or Batman, for example. We have literal educational baby shows for Batman. Then we have very violent adult shows and movies. My point is, if Sims wants to become a large franchise, they should do this too. Sims 4 and My Sims can remain family-friendly for everyone, but maybe gear Urbz towards an older audience and advertise it as such. It doesn't have to be M-rated by any means, but let it be a little bit more raunchier than Sims 4 is, please. And finally, I do not want them to change the style. I love the Urbz style because it's so iconic and unique. Even though the Sims 4 style is cute, you gotta admit, it is very reminiscent of Pixar or even Fortnite. Urbz had a very unique look to it, a look that made it stand out. I also just love the little details of this style, like how there are virtually no straight lines, which sounds weird, but let me try to explain this the best I can. Everything has a wobbly and uneven appearance to it. Look at the couch and TVs compared to the ones in the Sims 2 console, for example. Look at the walls and floors. Notice that nothing can be straight? This makes this style really pop out, and again, makes it very unique to look at. Plus, it was even crazier than the Sims 4 style, even cartoonier. For example, the hairs were far more cartoonier and less realistic. Just really creative stuff with this game. So I'd really want a new Urbz game to keep this style, but only with better/higher quality graphics. Anyways, because of SimGirl Lindsay suggesting that she is interested in revisiting the Urbz again, as well as all the new Urbz included in the new Sims 4 pack, I just really wanted to share my thoughts on what I'd like to see in a new Urbz game. What about you guys? What would y'all like to see in a new Urbz game? Feel free to discuss it in the comments, and as always, thank you all for hearing my thoughts.